In today's video, we'll continue on with our NHL GM report cards. We're working our way through the teams in the Metropolitan Division. Today we go to the Big Apple and take a look at Chris Drury and the New York Rangers. We'll analyze their moves and grade his work coming up next. So welcome back to another video here at Top Shelf Hockey. As I mentioned, today we're looking at the New York Rangers and analyzing their offseason moves and giving GM Chris Drury his report card for his offseason work. So we're going to take a look at any trades that were made, any other moves, and in his case, we had to look at the waiver wire, as well as some internal signings and some players that came in through free agency. We'll take a look at how the team changed, additions, subtractions, and really, are they better, the same, or how are they going to be next year? And we'll obviously hand out his report card to him based on all of those thoughts. So let's start first by looking at some trades, and really we only seen one. It involved division rival Pittsburgh Penguins, with the Rangers picking up Riley Smith from Pittsburgh for a 2027 second rounder and a conditional fifth in 2025. So nothing too substantial. They're hoping that Riley Smith can play the role of a top six forward. That's what they're betting on. It's hard to say. I mean, Smith has been fairly consistent last year. Definitely wasn't great for him in Pittsburgh, but before that he had a good run during his time in Vegas. Prior to Vegas, of course, he was not really all that as established, which is why he was available. I know looking back at some of the moves for the expansion draft to Vegas look a little bit silly now, but you got to remember a lot of those guys at the time, they never had their opportunities to be established, which is why they were available in the first place. But Riley Smith was not happy to be in Pittsburgh, wasn't really a good fit there. And I'm pretty sure by the looks of it, he might get a shot to play on the top line. Whether or not he sticks it out there and does well, that might be another story. We'll have to wait and see. But that was really their only trade. Of course, the other bold move here that we saw from GM Chris Drury and the New York Rangers was how they went about moving on from Barclay Goodrow. Barclay Goodrow was obviously a player that they liked the player. Not that they don't. He actually had a good playoff. But his regular seasons have not been great. And for what they're paying him to be for them, it just wasn't something they could justify any longer without having Barclay Goodrow, like playoff Goodrow, all year long. And at the end of the day, he had protection in his contract. They were unable to work out a trade because of the term, which is funny because they could retain salary. But they did have a team that would take him through waivers. So they put him on waivers. He kind of had a backdoor deal with San Jose and Mike Greer, and they claimed him. Of course, with players, when they had trade protection, you can block certain teams, but unless you have a full no-move clause, and he did not, then you can be put on waivers and can be picked up that way. And sometimes teams will threaten players and be like, yeah, work with us, or you're going on waivers and this team is going to pick you up, and it'll have backdoor deals like that done up. And I'm not sure if anything like that went down this time, but it's basically what happened. And they got, a workaround to move the contract to the Sharks. So ultimately, a very bold move here this offseason from Drury. They were working on something similar with Captain Jacob Trouba. Heavily rumored trade had Trouba going to the Detroit Red Wings. And if you look at Detroit's activity and some of the what I'll call confusing moves from GM Steve Yzerman, it makes all the sense in the world now that they were planning on picking up Trouba from the Rangers. Obviously, it sounds like New York was going to retain some of the salary, but his no-move clause that he did have changed on July 1st to a modified no trade. And this information kind of leaked out ahead of time. I'm not sure if Trouba or his agent really got wind of it or knew of anything before that. I don't know what was discussed or what was told to them, but certainly once they kind of got wind of it, they did everything they could to block the trade. Obviously, his trade protection went from, a full no move to a modified no trade. He had to submit, I think it was 14 or 15 teams, made sure Detroit and any other team they thought would take him would be on it, and it couldn't happen without his permission. Of course, we know Trouba, has a long-term deal, but he's down to his final couple of years there with the Rangers. Of course, we know his wife works in the medical world, has a doctor residency that she's completing there. And for family purposes, and I completely understand this, they don't want to uproot their family. He wants to stick this out because it's not fair to her. They'd obviously have to live apart, most likely. So from that perspective, I think everybody should respect Jacob Trouba's intentions here and why he went about things the way he did. But sad to say, just from Drury's standpoint, he was on his way to having an extremely bold offseason and clearing a bunch of money off their cap. And this one did not work out. Now, it's fair to say that Trouba will have 1 year left after this year, and I would be highly doubtful that he'll be back next year. I think this is definitely going to be Trouba's last year as a Ranger. I think that they probably have a good understanding of that, and maybe he'll be more willing to work with the team as well. Might be awkward going back into that room after when training camp opens up. I'm not sure. But yeah, it was one of the bigger stories of the early part of the offseason, and unfortunately, Drury was not able to execute. But all indications are it was well on its way. Looking at some signings internally, they did more than they did externally. They got Kako signed early to a 1 year deal, basically equivalent to his qualifying offer, $2.4 million. Chad Rubido gets 1 year deal, a league minimum. Braden Schneider signs 2 years at 2.2. I think that's a pretty good deal for them. Matthew Robertson, 1 year league minimum. And then they avoided arbitration, signed Ryan Lindgren to a 1 year deal at $4.5 million. So again, Ryan Lindgren also signs 1 year. I think they want to get a better idea where their cap situation is after this year, knowing if they move Trouba or not. I think there were some concerns on signing Lindgren too long as well. And they really, they got their internal business taken care of. Most of that was done early. Lindgren's the only one that kind of drug on a bit. Externally, they bring in Sam Carrick, who finished the season with the Edmonton Oilers, playing a lot on their fourth line. He signs a 3-year contract with the Rangers, $1 million per year. So he should be a decent fourth line center for them. Then they bring in some depth players. Bo Gruhl comes in from the Anaheim Ducks. Gruhl was not qualified as an RFA, became a UFA, and signed a UFA deal with the Rangers. And Casey Fitzgerald, of course, son of Tom Fitzgerald, their rival, obviously close by in New Jersey, 1 year deal at league minimum as well. Both those guys most likely have to play time in the minors, will be put on waivers, and could be eligible for call-ups depending on how injuries and whatnot go throughout the year. Taking a look at the addition, subtraction, so the in and out part of the Rangers offseason here, just to summarize everything. Coming in, we really only had the 3 players. You have Sam Carrick, Benoit Olivier Gruhl, and Casey Fitzgerald, so nothing earth-shattering by any means. Going out, Barclay Goodrow, who said they lost purposely on waivers to San Jose. Blake Wheeler does not return. Eric Gustafsson signs elsewhere through free agency. Jack Roslovic does not return, as well as Alex Winberg. Both of their deadline deals come back and leave through free agency. No big surprise there. So really, your lineup is not all that different than last year. They essentially, if you look at their forward group, you're probably going to try Riley Smith on the top line with Mika Zibanejad and Chris Kreider. You're going to probably play Trocheck with Panarin and Lafreniere. You got Philip Hedl, if he's able to be back. He'll be your third line center, probably with Kako and Will Cooley. And then you're going to put Sam Carrick, your new addition, on the fourth line, probably with Rempe and Vesey. So not a whole lot of difference there. The blue line, largely the same as well. Fox and Lindgren, Miller and Trouba, Braden Schneider instead of playing with Gustafsson. Right now you have to think that's probably a spot for Zach Jones. Maybe Chad Rubido as the depth person there. And then you get Fitzgerald as well to compete for the spot. So you have a little extra depth. The goaltending is the same with Shesterkin and Quick. So goaltending is the same. The decor is mostly the same except 1/3 pair defenseman difference. And to be honest, I do think Gustafsson did a pretty good job. I'm not sure. I mean, Jones, I know, has had good potential, but he hasn't really had like an extended long look there. So I'm not really sure if he'll be better or not. But fair to say the decor is basically the same. Up front in the forward group, not a lot of differences there. Your deadline additions, of course, are gone. A slightly different top six, a slightly different bottom six, but nothing earth-shattering. 10 of 12 forwards, basically the same. You're going to have the same team. They had a great result last year. There's no reason why to think that they can't do it again. So really, Chris Drury didn't do anything earth-shattering. He made one bold move. He tried to make a second bold move. And I do have to think if they move Trouba, that they probably were going to make a play for another top six forward. That would be where they'd put the money, I would think. But it never worked out that way. But he was on pace. And at least Riley Smith comes over. It's only for 1 year. They don't have to really worry about that being a long-term commitment there. Kako's another guy that still heavily rumored to be moved. Still questionable about his future. At this point, though, it does look like he'll start the season because lack of interest. You got to hope that things pick up for him, or they may not be able to move him, and he may end up slowly kind of grinding away as just, working his way out of the league. I don't know. It's hard to say. I mean, he's not lived up to the hype at all. And hopefully that maybe he can get more of a top 6 opportunity too, because I said between him and Lafreniere for the first part of their career, no wonder they weren't living up to the hype and putting up the numbers. They weren't not really getting to play with top players. So we'll see. Brendan Hoffman's also another player to watch in training camp. I got to wonder with the amount of time he's put in after being drafted, if he's going to finally get a look too. So we'll see where things go that way. Cap-wise, they're pretty tight, so it's going to be tricky to do. So we'll have to see what happens. But at the end of the day, I'm going to give Chris Drury a grade of a B. I don't think he deserves a bad grade. I don't think he deserves an amazing grade. It was okay, but with the work he had to do, his internal work was get the Kako contract, the Schneider contract, and the Lindgren contract. I am totally fine with all of those deals. Good job there. They signed a few depth players, didn't do anything stupid. I'm not in love with the Riley Smith trade by any means, but based on what was out there, it's a pretty low-risk move. I would have liked to have seen them execute better on the Trouba deal, and I wonder if maybe they would have did a different move, and maybe not brought in Smith, but maybe somebody that might be a little bit stronger, and which is probably going to be the move they try to make at the deadline or going into next year as well. So I'll grade him as a B. Like I said, it was a bold offseason in a sense for Drury, but at the same time, it was rather somewhat quiet and uneventful after the Gaudreau situation. The Trouba stuff kind of fizzled out early, and then it was just taking care of some basic business. So it wasn't anything earth-shattering. But based on how they played last year, they should be able to come back and rival for being one of the top teams in the East again and top of the Metro Division would be my guess. So let me know your thoughts on the offseason moves and let me know how you'd grade Drury's work in the comments. We'll discuss further. If you're new to the channel, make sure you subscribe and stick around. We'll keep you up to date with the latest news, rumors, and analysis of all 32 NHL teams. Thank you for watching. I'll catch you next time.